Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Books You Can Sink Your Teeth Into podcast. I am your host, Granite A. Miller. We have a big show today, a lot of things going on. We are going to finish our book, Field of Blood, that we have been reading about the Congress heading up to the Civil War, 1830s to 1860s. But also today, I've got some big news for you. Big news is that Ravenscythe 2 is just about ready. We've got it all edited. Cover's just about done. And we are in the final processes of getting this book. So we anticipate next week or two it should be available for you, and we'll do a show on that, interrupting our Civil War stuff. But yeah, it's really good, really fun to get this book out. So Ravenscythe 2, the Witches Convention, will be on the market soon for everyone who's a fan of the Ravenscythe series. So that's big news number one. We've got a lot to go over today in terms of where we are. We're going to be really kind of covering the years 1850 to 1860, right up to the Civil War, right? Next week we'll start the actual Civil War. I think we're going to start with Ulysses S. Grant's book, his autobiography, but then we'll dive into General Robert E. Lee's book, his autobiography, and we'll do a compare and contrast. We won't spend as much time with these books like we've done with Field of Blood, only because I feel that the Field of Blood is really gives so much information that there's just a lot to cover. So let's get quickly caught up. So last time we left, we had the gag order in Congress, so we couldn't talk about, so nobody could talk about slavery, right? So the Northern Whigs and Northern Democrats were feeling, pretty put out by this, and the abolitionists were growing in power. And as this happened, we see that the parties are getting more and more demands to face off with the slave powers. Now remember, slave-owning states, districts, went all the way up. D.C. was a slave-owning district. So, it was all over. I think the first free state was Pennsylvania, right? I think, yeah, it was Pennsylvania, being free. So, as you look, looking north from D.C. area. So, we had a lot of things going back and forth, gag orders, everything. We had the Mexican War, and the Mexican War, according to Ulysses S. Grant, was, he says, the start of the Civil War, and we'll talk about this, of why it was. I'm in agreement with that, but I also feel there was something else that happened that helped spur this along, and that was so much the invention and the implementation of the telegraph. Now, the telegraph is a way to send messages across long distances, and if you're like me, if you remember back in the days when the fax machine came out, everybody's like, wow, documents being able to send by fax, right? And the fax machine would print it out, and then we, of course, nowadays we've got instant messaging followed by social media and stuff like that. So back then the telegraph was the way. So now information can be sent instantaneously. So something happens in DC, boom, it's sent across the wire up to New York. New York's printing that. So it could be like something happens in the afternoon. By the evening press, it could be printed. So we got a rapid advance now in technology, which gives much greater access to communications. This is huge, in my opinion, right? It's my opinion. This is huge because before that, how did the newspapers get their information? Well, one, they have to send a reporter. Two, congressmen would write and tell them exactly what happened, right? So basically, the information was controlled. And so if a reporter was there and saw something happen, a congressman go up and talk to them and, get them to, spin it a certain way, right? But now with this instant access of this of the telegraph, boom, that story's hitting literally after it happened, and the congressmen and people in the Senate lost their power over what was being dictated to the press, to the masses. So I think that was a pretty huge development that also contributed to everything, because now the people could hear more information more quickly coming down the pike. So the war ended, the Mexican-American War ended, and the United States was given a huge chunk of land. We covered this last time. And this land, was it going to be slave owning or free? And basically, there was a compromise called the Missouri Compromise of 1820, originally called the Louisiana Compromise, I think. But anyway, it stems from the Louisiana Purchase, and this compromise said that anything south of the 36th parallel is slave owning. Everything north can be free. And now, when the new territories came in, the southern states realized that, okay, we need to go north of 36th parallel, and they did. And so this is where we get into the conflicts with Kansas and Missouri. These states, because now the Republicans, the southern states, the Democrats in the southern states said that anything, we will let the people know. Anything that's above 36 parallel, the people will decide. The people will vote. And they'll vote. And so they started, a lot of the southern states started sending, people to settle this land so that it would be part of the slave-owning South. Why? Because the southern states realized, I keep wanting to say Republican, the southern states realized that if the territory was given to the North would then have more congressional representation and then start to make demands on the South, demands that they didn't want, right? And so it was important to keep that power that, if there's 15 North states, there's got to be 15 Southern states. And so it was really important to have that. Now, when this whole Missouri Compromise came about, Thomas Jefferson said, he predicted, and it was really good, he predicted that it would fracture the country. And so it did, actually. So his prediction was right. So we get Kansas, Missouri, and then we have this, and then Nebraska. Okay, all carved out of the land that was won, that we paid for, to Mexico after the war, and pretty much it was populated already by Missourians. They already went up the Missouri River. They started populating that land as fast as possible. So that by the time the northern settlers came, they couldn't go along the Missouri River. They actually had to go north, right, into Nebraska pretty much, or they would go westward into Kansas and start settling there. And then there were, of course, conflicts between free people who wanted free soil, free land, no slavery, and the people who wanted slavery. And within Kansas, these clashes started to become armed, dangerous. The movie The Outlaw Josie Wales is a depiction of a southern farmer. So Josie was a southern farmer in Missouri, and the Kansas Jayhawks, who were the abolitionists. Let me just make sure I'm right on that. They were the ones who rode down, slaughtered Josie Wales' family, and retreated back up into Kansas. I have to make sure I get that right. But that is definitely that's right. The Jayhawks were the abolitionist supporters. Josie Wales then joins the Bushwhackers. So that group that he joins in the movie were the Bushwhackers. And so there was armed conflict all throughout state Kansas, and that's why they call it. The time was called Bleeding Kansas. Now, as these events unfurled, the northern states demanded that representation in Congress be voiced. So the gag order just couldn't flow. Now, this is where the southern states, who pretty much were the aggressors in Congress the entire time, pushing their agenda, now start claiming northern aggression because the northern states are wanting representation. The Whigs they fell apart. They couldn't keep themselves together, And out of that fracturing of that party, we got what was first called the Know Nothings. And they were called the Know Nothings not because they didn't know anything, it was because they wouldn't tell anybody what they were thinking. So if they said, "What was that meeting about?" We know nothing. So it was actually kind of a neat. And from there it started to become, from there, the Republican Party was born. And the Republican Party at that time was anti-slavery, and they weren't going to be pushed around. So unlike the Northern Democrats, unlike the Northern Whigs, who pretty much just collapsed when Southern states put pressure on them, and there's lots of reasons why. We talked about this in past episodes, why they would. There just wasn't a great desire at that time to fight, this. But now the Republicans had an agenda, and they were not going to allow to be pushed around, number one, and number two, they were for abolishing slavery. So this was very threatening to the Southern states, the Republicans rising in power. And we actually had, I think it was in the 34th Congress or 35th, one of them leading up to the Civil War, the Speaker of the House was a Republican, elected Republican. And this started troubling the Southern states because they could just see the writing was on the wall. So we have, and in addition, Northern states, one of the reasons why the Republicans rose was because people who were sitting on the fence, right? Northern representatives, like in the Whig Party, for example, even Northern Democrats too, they were sitting on the fence, didn't want to, just keep try to ride it. But the Northern people weren't having it anymore. And that's why the Republican Party grew so fast, because Republicans said, these are our goals. And that's what people attached themselves to. So that, and again with the telegraph, now information was getting out there much more quickly, and much more like lack of editing, right? So you couldn't have a congressman kind of craft a story the way that he wanted it to be. Now the newspapers are going to report. So if a congressman was acting bad in calling a session, that's what was reported, right? And he looked bad to his constituents. So we had that. And for me, I think that we've got lots of issues going on, right? Missouri, Kansas, Nebraska, that was pretty much Civil War was starting there, with the trouble that was going on. But really, I think it was John Brown who really brought things. There was the election of Abraham Lincoln as a Republican president was the straw that broke the camel's back. But that camel's back was pretty much broken by that time. And John Brown was just the last. For me, it was like, really, this is it. This is. And who was John Brown? So John Brown was an evangelical, right? Born up in North. He just was an abolitionist. Did not want anything to do with slavery, and he felt that his goal was to liberate the slaves. And so he was in Kansas, part of that bleeding Kansas. He was going through that nightmare. By the way, his dad, John Brown's dad, owned I think it was a tanning shop where the father of Ulysses S. Grant worked. Small world. What is that? 3 degrees of separation, something like that. I don't know. Going on a tangent. So what John Brown did, he raided Harper's Ferry. That's like in West Virginia right now. Back then I was in Virginia, and what he was trying to do was he's trying to get arms, and he wanted to arm slaves and help liberate them. His attempt failed, right, and there was a huge media circus about this. He was executed for doing this. His last words were, the nation's sins can only be purged by blood. And again, like Thomas Jefferson predicting the inevitable outcome of what, number one, drawing a line across the sand does. And then number two, this has gotten to a point where, if people aren't willing to budge, then the conflict is going to arise. And sure enough, then when the president Abraham Lincoln was elected, that was it. The Southern states said no more, and they seceded. They went through with their threats. So we will come back now, pick up there at next time. I hope you're enjoying this. I sure am. This is great. We're gonna really start picking up with. We're gonna start with Ulysses S. Grant's autobiography next week, and first of all, he's a fantastic writer. I gotta tell you, I enjoyed his book. He just writes so well, engaging, and it's like, wow, wish I had that skill. So, okay, up next, the one and only Count Vlad. He'll be here with all his nonsense. So, hope you all have a wonderful day, wonderful weekend, and we'll talk soon. Cheers, bye. Hello, everyone. This is the Count. It is good to see you. Thank you. Here's my castle. It is a beautiful night. It is raining. You can hear the rain. And all the Count has to do is stop. And the rain stops just like that. That's the power that the Count has, yes. It's good to see you, my friends. I'm glad that you are here. Some big news. The big news is that the Ravenscythe, book number 2, is on its way. So this is the book number 1, and the book number 2 is coming. So we will soon have that book, the Ravenscythe, book number 2, where you can continue to follow the adventures of Granite and Batty, the two ghosts that haunt the castle. And of course, my beautiful Queen Lilith is in the book, and so you get to watch and read about her as well. So, I also have some other news. This news, my good friend Count Fangora, he is in Hollywood right now, and he is auditioning for a movie. Yes, and so we have two fingers crossed for him, but not in a cross. We have to cross like this, and we are waiting. We are waiting for some good news from the Hollywood for the Count of Fangora and his big audition that he's trying to get into a movie. I think he's getting into a vampire movie. I do not know, but we are very happy to see him having some success in this light. So, in other news, then, we want just to quickly talk about The Dead Adrenaline. Dead Adrenaline, the book by author Clinton J. Cortica, is book number 3. He's working on it. Incredible. He is working on number 3, and this Garante Miller and Beth Flowers can't even finish book number 2. So, cannot wait. I really like The Dead Adrenaline with the zombies. I don't like eating the zombies, but I do like reading about them. So, Dead Adrenaline is a good book. Finally, you all know that the vampire is able to change into a wolf. The Count has had trouble with this, changing into a wolf. The Count tries and he changes into a pug. So I'm going to go ahead and show you my ability. The pug is a very beautiful, loving creature, adorable. And I will go ahead and show you how I change into a pug. I simply just go like this. Pug. Okay, I'm back. Okay, so that's it for the show today. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you're gonna laugh, and we'll be back next week. And until then, I will say adieu, and I will fly out of here. So, adieu, mes amis.